and deal with the issues that are affecting our rural communities. Hence, you have the developmental monarchs approach that has been presented by our revered traditional leaders. We have the invest rural approach that traditional leaders have embarked on. You have a private entity that has been formed by traditional leaders in the name of United Rural Kingships Holdings that seeks to lead traditional leaders in participating in the mainstream economy to be able to address the challenges that are there within rural communities. So we also, President, request that we will be setting up an Invest Rural office, an office that is going to focus mainly on Invest Rural. So we'd want support on that office. I've started communications between myself and Ntate Khosi and Ramaphosa. So there are discussions that are starting in government supporting that, and would request that the President should nudge a bit on that side so that we start moving on this program, because we believe that this is the only program that is going to change the lives of rural communities. We also note that the agrarian revolution can only be successful if the relevant government departments are willing to assist, and that the Department of Traditional Affairs has deployed officials who have a passion for rural communities, as opposed to the current that believe that agriculture is not their mandate, because that's what we are getting from others, that agriculture is a mandate in another department, so they don't want to get involved. So you have this silo approach, President, by most of our departments that don't necessarily want to embrace the programs that we are trying to do. We've benchmarked this, we've started benchmarking Invest Rural. We've gone to the Royal Bafokeng to see how they've been developing their own communities. We also looked at the Bakhatla, Bakhafela. The challenges, President, as we embark on this route, they've already highlighted a few challenges, and I think it's challenges that all of us are going to face, that we want to help government in infrastructure development. We will also participate in building of roads, building of bulk water systems, with the monies that we will get through Invest Rural. But the problem is what we are getting from those traditional councils is that once that is done, there's a challenge between them and municipalities, where municipalities are bulldozing them from the projects and the assets that they have bought as a traditional council on behalf of those communities. I think there has to be a proper communication between the institution and municipalities in relation to the assets that we'll be building through Invest Rural. This program needs 1 trillion rands. And from that, I think there's going to be a lot of assets. And those assets, there has to be a clear engagement between us and municipalities in terms of how we are going to manage those assets. In a nutshell, Honorable President, we want to thank you, and we want to say, as a sector, we are here and willing to assist government in terms of making sure that the country moves forward, that we truly change the lives of our communities and taking over the economy and taking it back to those rural communities. I would now take this opportunity, Honorable President, to invite you, but also do something that is out of the ordinary, because normally one is supposed to be inviting the President. But I want to invite the President and also make the President feel as part of this program that we are starting. We want to hand over officially the document on Invest Rural. This is a symbolic handover of Invest Rural document, and proper documents will be sent. This is my copy, but this is a symbolic so that the President has ownership of this program that we are starting. So, President, as you come forward to come and address us, I am going to stand up as well, give you the Invest Rural document, so the master plan, so that you can feel and see the work that the sector has committed to do to help you as this government to be able to change the lives of rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders, Deputy Chairperson, Nkosi Mhlawuli, Your Majesties, Ministers and Deputy Ministers who are in attendance, all esteemed guests and ladies and gentlemen. For a moment, my heart jumped for joy when Nkosi Mahlangu said he wants to give me something. And I thought that it would be a letter that would be telling me that we're going to give you cattle and sheep and all that. But I must say that this is still as good as cattle and sheep. I'm truly grateful and honored to have been given this. I want to start off with joining Kgosi Mokoena in extending my deepest sadness and sympathies and condolences to the family of a fellow South African who lost his life yesterday. Mthokozisi Mtuba, who passed away yesterday in Johannesburg during the protest of our children. We're protesting in favor of free education, the funding that they would like to get from government for their education. Mthokozisi Mtuba Ntumba was an innocent bystander. And indeed, even, I would say, even the students, much as they were protesting, the way I saw it on television did not warrant the type of resistance and push from our police. And this has unfortunately resulted in the death of Mthokozisi Ntuba and the injury of some of our students. This is most unfortunate, and it disturbed me quite deeply because it demonstrated that whilst our people were protesting rather peacefully, there was overreach, it seemed like that, by the police. Obviously, this matter has to be investigated by the relevant body, and that those who acted beyond what they were meant to do should be dealt with in accordance with our laws. And what one can do now is to extend our condolences, but also to say that as a government, much as we are facing enormous challenges and difficulties, the issue of education is important and is a priority of this government. When the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Nzimande, came to me and informed me that we are facing a huge problem in that the funding that we have for NSFAS is not going to be sufficient to fund the new intakes and also to extend those who are already in the system. And there was a huge gap that ran into billions. And I said to him, Minister, we've got to find a solution. Money has to be found, much as the additional may not really be within the budget. The process of addressing this was then commenced, and there was good interaction between higher education and Treasury. And fortunately, this matter was properly discussed by Cabinet yesterday, and the relevant decision was taken, and an announcement has just been made by the ministers in relation to this. We will not abandon our students. We will fund their education because it is their right. They have a right to education, and our government, much as we are facing enormous difficulties and challenges, we will continue to find solutions, because funding education is an investment. We are investing in the future of South Africa, and we invest in it through educating our young people. The debate that has just ensued here has affirmed once again that this National House puts the needs as well as the interests and concerns of South African people first. What has come through clearly in today's debate is that as much as you are the custodians and the rightful custodians of our traditions and heritage, as our traditional leaders, you envision yourself first and foremost as architects of development and progress. And this has come through in the various inputs that have been made here. Now, this is a vision to which we, as the government of the Republic of South Africa, subscribe to. And to hear our traditional leaders articulating a developmental vision, Nkosi Mavuso was quite clear on our country being a developmental state, and much of what many of you have spoken about is about ensuring that we do indeed become a developmental state. We are now in the final decade towards meeting the aspirations that we all set out in our National Development Plan. And it is this NDP that prioritizes the creation of a rural economy that is integrated and inclusive. It is this National Development Plan that sees the entire South Africa as a developmental site, without focusing on one area only, which the apartheid government focused on, which was the urban areas. Now, the democratic government that our people elected into office in 1994 has sought over the past years to look at our country in an inclusive and holistic basis, and to see development as a process that should spread throughout the country without overemphasis in one area only. Now, this is a matter or an issue that our traditional leaders must be centrally involved in with regard to driving this vision. An inclusive economy is a new economy. It is one in which every South African man, woman, and child must have equal opportunity, whether they are in Umhlabu Yalingana, or eThekwini, or in Oliphant's Hoek, or in Pampierstad, or in Khabalatsani, or Madombija, or Polokwane, or in Kimberley. They must feel that South Africa also belongs to them, and that developmental trajectory of this country will also affect them and will also lead to the improvement of their lives. Now, we are emerging from the worst crisis our country has faced in modern times. And you will have heard the economic results just a few days ago, where they said that the decline of our economy at -7% is the largest for 75 years. So we are emerging from a pandemic that has had a huge impact on our country and our people. So we face a massive problem. The pandemic has highlighted once again the vast disparities between urban and rural dwellers with regards to accessing healthcare, basic services, social services, as well as connectivity that Jose Pilani was talking about, and a number of you have also alluded to. This pandemic has just brought it to the fore. And let me say that it is not only in South Africa that COVID-19 has brought to the fore the disparities that exist. It has highlighted the inequalities between countries, even within countries, of many, many countries around the world. But in our country, it has exacerbated that even much more because of our historical baggage of inequality, of poverty, and unemployment. I am pleased that issues of economic development have set the tone at this moment in this debate rather, because at this moment in our history, economic recovery should be the foremost objective that we need to address. Many of you, I'm pleased to say, have spoken so extensively about economic development. If one were not aware that this is a debate in the National House of Traditional Leaders, one would have thought that maybe we are in an economic summit of some sort. So many of you have become economists in many, many ways. And I'm really pleased with that because it just shows that we are advancing. We are now beginning to look at how best we can develop our country economically. And it's good that as South Africans, we should now start focusing on the economy and how best we can all participate and play a role in the economic development of our country. Even our young people, they want an education because they want to become key players in the economy of our country. So we have in many ways arrived at a plateau where our economic understanding is deepening, it's expansive and expanding, and we're becoming more and more focused on what needs to be done. What is required of each and every one of us right now is to put shoulder to wheel and drive the economic reconstruction and recovery plan that we announced in October last year. Because it gives rise to many tasks that all of us should have in making sure that indeed it is implemented. It relies for its success on partnerships that involve all sections of our society. Now, this master plan that I've just been given, it's a tome, it's a book of many, many pages, more than 200 pages. It's clear proof that you are prepared as the traditional leaders of our country to play a role in making this real. And if we are to make it real, we should be working as partners and identifying areas in which we can all deepen our partnership. These are not only the partnerships between government, business, and labor, but also partnerships that we really should forge with traditional leaders, with faith-based organizations, and other formations. Women's organizations, youth formations, sporting formations, you name them all. As it has been articulated in this House today, traditional leaders must not be bystanders to the process. You are tired of being bystanders. Nothing must take place about you, without you, and you are refusing to be left behind. You, as traditional leaders, must also be deeply involved in the implementation of our district development model. I am saddened to hear reference to traditional leaders in a number of areas not being brought into the fold. When I participated in the launching of the various districts where we were launching the district development model, I insisted that the traditional leaders in those areas must be there. I am rather taken aback by Nkosi Mavuso when he said, "You don't know what the DDM is all about. You don't even understand what drives it." Now, we will correct that because you must be at the center. You must be at the center and not bystanders to the district development model, because the district development model is about a joined-up government. It's about integrated government. It's about doing away, Nkosi Mahlangu, with the silo mentality where departments of government act alone in particular areas of our country. We want all of government to be involved in developmental issues, and we will ensure that that happens and that our traditional leaders are centrally involved. Because this is an integrated approach that seeks to ensure that development of different areas in our country, urban and rural, with all the key role players working together, happens in a way that will lead to development and the improvement of the lives of our people. Now, as traditional leaders, we believe you are well positioned to ensure that the district plans that get developed are informed by and respond to the real needs of communities on the ground. And it is within your means as our leaders in the rural areas to bridge the urban-rural divide that is perpetuating inequalities in our society. There is not a single traditional leader in this House who is not aware of the crisis in their communities caused by mass migration to the cities. Many of our people keep moving to the cities, as it is happening in many other parts of the world. But having become aware of it, we need to develop our rural areas so that people have less need to move away. It is you as our traditional leaders who can play a key role in helping to stem this tide. Working together with us as government can make this a reality. Our rural areas must become centers of economic activity, of industry, and of employment opportunities. Now, many of you were relating the wealth that resides in your rural areas. the great assets, as Nkosi Mahlangu was saying, that resides in your rural areas, and the great opportunities. And there are many opportunities, and you have already calculated them to amount to 1 trillion rand, I think, through this master plan that you have put together. Now, to say that you will require 1 trillion rand means that you've already identified a number of opportunities. So we must therefore work together with a number of role players, investors and otherwise, so that we can make this real. But what I find most impressive as well is that you have now decided to take action on your own. As a number of speakers in this debate have said, our rural communities want to be self-sufficient. You have now decided, hore, mpe ya lapisa, motho o kgona ke sa gage. Ke mo le leng teng jaanong. A le sa batla hore le re mpe, nifuna ukuvuka nizenzele. Nizenzele zonke izinto ezizokwazi ukuthi kube nentuthuko lapho abantu bakithi
do things on your own so that you
So for
can
me,
be
this
able to
is
be
a
self-sustainable,
great approach that we need to lay
so that there can be
emphasis on.
development
As
where our
traditional
people
leaders, you
reside.
understand the aspirations of our people to do things for themselves. And our people are proud. We are a proud people, not arrogantly proud, but we are a proud people. We want to be able to do things for ourselves and to help ourselves. And the moment for us to do so has now arrived, where we can work together as government, as traditional leaders, as communities, and other role players. It is our responsibility as government to provide the enabling environment and also the means for our communities to develop themselves. For its part, government has prioritized rural infrastructure development to make these areas attractive for investment, but also to meet the growing needs of our people. Now, I think it was Khosi Pilani who said, we've been talking about, it was, I think, Nkosi Mahlangu, about an infrastructure development fund. Now, we, about 2 years ago, said we need an infrastructure fund. That has now been set up. That infrastructure fund is going to attract investors from the private sector who will participate in investing in this fund. And out of this fund will mutate a number of other opportunities, sub-funds and what have you, that are now going to reach out to the areas where you are. Now, the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan speaks to a massive investment in infrastructure, and much of it will be in the rural areas. And this is going to include investments in infrastructure in areas such as water infrastructure, rural roads and bridges, and rollout of, yes, broadband to public facilities in rural areas so that our young people are able to be at the same level as they learn online with urban young people. Our experience is that infrastructure investment has the greatest impact when communities are involved in determining the need in an area and are closely involved in implementation. Now, gone are the days where the building of a dam, the building of a bridge will just be parachuted into the areas where our traditional leaders have authority in. Gone are those days. If an investment like that has to be put in place, there's got to be proper consultation, and this is even going to be better now that as traditional leaders, you have your own master plan, which needs to be integrated together with the various other plans that government has in place. Infrastructure must be suited to local conditions and must empower the communities in which it is located. And the empowerment process thereof must include proper planning. And the planning must not be parachuted in. It must be organic. It must involve all the various people in the area, including our traditional leaders, and yes, indeed, various other formations, women's formations, youth, and otherwise. It must also lead to the proper empowerment of young people, of women, and creation of jobs. And the skills that are developed must be left in the area as well. This is an area where traditional leaders can play a very important role. Our economic recovery must also involve the development of local production and industrialization, so that the goods, including services that are needed, should not be imported from far afield. They should be found in the areas where our rural communities live. This must happen in rural and underdeveloped areas if it is going to benefit all South Africans. Rural communities must not only be consumers of goods and services, they must also be producers of goods and those services. They must have the means to process the products that their areas produce into value-added goods that can be sold on the shelves and stores across the country and across the world. Mavuso, be it the cattle that come from the Eastern Cape, be it the wool that will be sheared from the sheep in the Eastern Cape, or will it be the maize that come from the rural parts of the Free State, and so forth. Some of the master plans that have been developed between government, industry, and labor, particularly in the poultry and sugar sectors, seek to promote emerging small-scale farmers and producers in the rural areas. And I have seen how empowering these can be. Need to go to KZN, need also to go to Mpumalanga to see how small-scale farmers are becoming integrated into agro-processing. There are numerous opportunities for alignment between this work and the Invest Rural program. Our focus must now be on working with local authorities to craft customized, specific plans for every village and area under your jurisdiction. And when I replied to the debate of the State of the Nation, I said, we've got a lot of strengths and endowments. What we now need to do is to look at the strengths, the assets, and the endowments that each of our areas have. Certain areas have certain endowments. It could be cattle, it could be sheep, it could be maize, it could be a whole lot. And then make sure that we develop those areas and we rely on those endowments to take out and eke out the very best out of those type of endowments that we have. Now, there are plans that must build on the unique type of our endowments. And it will be wonderful if we can get to a point where every village, every area of our country, having identified its own endowments, comes up with a clear plan of what it can do to create opportunities for our people. We may, for example, assume that a medicinal plant we have been harvesting for centuries is just there for private use when, in fact, has the potential of being turned into a commercially viable product. Being located in an area with abundant water resources is an attractive investment draw card for mining, or for agriculture. And this is where Nkosikazi Mhlawuli, we then move away just from having all these international companies just coming to extract ore from our areas. This is where we now move to a place where, or to a point where we say, we have these endowments, we have these investment opportunities, come work with us. We will bring our assets, you will bring your finance, we will bring our human capital, you will bring your technology, and together we can work together and have something that is most useful to develop the areas of our country. That is where we've arrived at now. And our areas with an abundance of sun, like in the Northern Cape, have great potential for becoming leaders in renewable energy, as we are becoming, particularly in that part of the world. We acknowledge, as Princess Moroka has stated, that to prepare traditional communities to be part of the Invest Rural strategy, we have to strengthen traditional systems. I could not agree more. Part of this involves the corporatization of traditional structures. We are committed to working with traditional leadership to provide all the necessary support to facilitate this. For us to achieve all our rural developmental goals, rural communities need to have land and must have the resources and the capabilities to work this land. We applaud those traditional leaders who have been supporting land restitution and redistribution. Since 2018, around 1.5 million hectares of communal land has been availed to traditional leaders, and I want to call on you to work with the department to avail more land for development and beneficiation. The Department of Agriculture and Land Reform and Rural Development and COCTA have recently entered into a memorandum of understanding to ensure that the land that has been availed by traditional leaders is cultivated and it is worked on for agricultural and farming production. This represents progress, and I acknowledge the concerns expressed by a number of speakers about the urgency of holding the Presidential Land Summit. Nkosi Mahlangu says, you want a date, and a date is what you're going to get, because we are committed to have that land summit. It is hugely important to enable us to address the issue of land. And Nkosi Mahlangu said, we must also speed up the process of amending our constitution to give effect to the whole process of expropriation of land without compensation. Now, this is now in Parliament, and it is being prosecuted through our parliamentary process. The Deputy President, who chairs the Interministerial Committee on Land Reform, will engage with the National House of Traditional Leaders to ensure that this does take place. We're confident that once all the provincial summits have taken place, we will be able to hold this Presidential Land Summit before the end of this year, or the end of this 2021-2022 financial year. Furthermore, traditional leaders need to join hands with the Department of Agriculture. Now, Khosi Pilani, you say, I have not given any directives. I'm giving a directive now. Akere no, agalefa di directive, ki hitlile hela mo ka bua, ke a bua bjano. Ke a kgola go nkutlwa sentle, kgosi ya me. That we need to join hands with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development towards the development of the communal land policy. Now, that is a specific area of work that we must embark upon. This, in the end, will go a long way to address the contentious issue of land tenure, and equally in traditional communities and elsewhere. Now, the prosperity of rural communities requires that we invest solidly in our people. We need to tackle the great divide in access to resources and support between rural and urban schools. We need to provide more opportunities for post-school study in rural areas so that young people in these communities do not have to travel to urban centers to gain skills, to gain knowledge, and also to acquire experience. Importantly, we need to ensure that our young people can find employment or even start their own businesses in a thriving rural economy, which we are going to see taking off the ground. What with the master plans that you now have, what with the commitment that we have at government, and what with a clear strategy that we are putting together. In the rural areas of our country, need to ensure that the energy, the talent, and the productivity of our young people is put to work so that we can stem the migration of the young people to our cities and to the urban areas, therefore leaving the rural areas impoverished, scarred, and underdeveloped. As we build the productive capacity of our economy, which necessarily takes time because it's not going to happen overnight, government has launched the Presidential Employment Stimulus to create employment and other livelihood opportunities immediately. Many of these opportunities are in rural areas. The Subsistence Producer Relief Fund, for example, is one of the largest employment stimulus programs and supports mostly rural farmers. Now, another fund, the one that we called Welisizwe Rural Bridges Program, builds and repairs bridges in rural areas, providing local employment and bringing many communities closer to schools, to health facilities, as well as to economic centers. Many of the 300,000 school assistants that have been recruited as part of the employment stimulus to support learning and teaching are placed in schools in rural areas. Now, Hosi Pilani may dismiss that or refer report hela. But these are things that are happening that we must become aware of, and these are things that we must embrace and do and make sure that they do happen. Because, yes, I may stand here and talk about this, but you are the ones who are supposed to say, these are all programs that are strengthened by the support and involvement of our traditional leaders. Our experience with COVID-19 has demonstrated the success we can achieve when we collaborate. We should continue to work together to address and overcome the number of challenges that we still face that have been raised here today. The issue raised by Nkosi Buthelezi on the powers and the functions of traditional leaders is fundamental to our understanding of the position and traditional leadership in our constitutional democracy. And Nkosi Buthelezi has been raising this for quite a long time. He has been a consistent voice on these issues, and I wish to thank him for the forthright manner in which he has raised these issues on a consistent basis. It is true that this matter has remained unresolved for many years. In fact, for the entire age or life of our democracy. Even in 1994, it was articulated. And it is equally true that the finalization of this matter will enable progress on several challenges that have been identified in this debate and more broadly. We must acknowledge that there are differing views across society on how to define the powers and the functions of traditional leadership. This has no doubt contributed to the lack of progress in dealing with this matter. Truth be told, there are different views in our country on this. What we need to do is to sit down and synthesize all those views and debate them and find a compromise type of solution, which is part of what we did when we structured or finalized our own constitution. But we are a nation that confronts challenges. We find common ground on even the most difficult and divisive matters. There is no reason why we cannot do the same on the powers and the functions of traditional leaders. The report of the task team that was established in 2018 provides a platform for our engagement on these issues. We should have a national conversation so that whatever we resolve like our constitution, reflects the views and the wishes of the people of South Africa. Our shared task now is to organize extensive consultations with traditional communities, with civic society, political parties, traditional leaders, and other stakeholders to arrive at a common understanding. This matter does require a common understanding, and once that common understanding exists, we can then move forward. Now, given the range of the different perspectives that exist on this matter, we can expect that the discussions will be robust and at times they will be difficult. But this is a discussion that we need to have, and it is also something that we need to conclude. As Nkosikazi Mhlawuli has rightly said, as traditional leaders, you will not be able to achieve your quest for self-reliance unless these outstanding matters are speedily resolved. I could not agree with her more. Kgosi Mokoena has raised the matter of time frames with regards to key legislation that directly impacts on traditional leadership, like the customary initiation bill. I understand that this is on the program of Parliament for this quarter and will be processed through the National Assembly. The Portfolio Committee for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has suggested that a colloquium be held on customary initiation, and we hope that it takes place prior to the next winter initiation season. With regards to the Traditional Courts Bill, we will be aware that last month in the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services, it was requested that we should have a legal opinion on its constitutionality. It is critical that these matters are resolved so that we can align the functioning of traditional courts with our constitutional values. It will be a moment of great historical significance when the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act comes into effect next month. As Mr. Lefleur of the National Khoisan Council has rightly said, it has been a long and difficult road towards official recognition, and our focus must now be on ensuring that integration happens and that there is good participation, as well as effective participation. We will be attending to the issue of appointing a commission on Khoisan matters as required by the Act. This will be a critical step that paves the way for the reconstitution of traditional councils and the induction of newly elected members of traditional councils. For the effective functioning of these councils, the newly elected members would need to receive targeted induction, that is, induction training, and arrangements will be made to ensure that such induction programs are available for provinces as well as at the local government level. Your Majesties, above and beyond your important developmental roles, traditional leadership must also be at the forefront of the moral regeneration of our nation. As those who occupy positions of authority and influence in our country, you have a key role to play in stamping out the social ills in our communities and our society. As Nkosikazi Mhlauli said, we have to work to empower women, because without women in the rural areas, development is not possible. Now, in a conversation earlier with Nkosikazi Mhlauli, she was relating about the degradation of morals in the Eastern Cape. And indeed, it happens all over the country, on how gender-based violence has become the order of the day, particularly in the area where she comes from in Pedi. And she said now Pedi is becoming the capital of gender-based violence and femicide. She was relating how drug abuse has become rife in that area as well. We wholeheartedly support induction for members who serve on traditional structures. We agreed that this must include gender sensitivity training, and that traditional structures must have active programs to empower women socially as well as economically. We acknowledge the role of this House in the implementation of Project Ndabezitha in the fight against gender-based violence and femicide, as well as a number of workshops held last year to sensitize traditional communities about domestic violence. This is good work that must continue. Several speakers have raised the issue of lack of implementation of decisions that we take. This is a serious problem which we must work together on and address together. Kgosi Mokoena has spoken at length about the lack of implementation, and particularly saying that our officials are not properly oriented towards implementing the decisions that we take, or even the pronouncements that are made, for instance, by the president and at times ministers. And that he also says that ministers also don't implement what is said. Now, this is concerning, and obviously implementation has to be the order of the day. The success of what we do now is going to revolve largely on implementation. And that is why in the State of the Nation address, I focus less on making huge pronouncements or dreams or aspirations, but more on what we need to do, what we have done, and what we are doing. Now, similarly in this area, we will now be focusing on the implementation. The department that's led by Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, as well as Deputy Minister Obed Bapela, will make sure that we identify the low-hanging fruit and the issues that we need to attend to implement some of the decisions that we have made and make sure that our officials live up to doing so. Among other things, this whole process of implementation requires that we work more closely ourselves. We should not wait for moments when we have grand meetings like these. We should be working more closely and meeting more regularly. We need to consider having this engagement. I would say we need to have an engagement, I would even say a lekgotla, over a two-day period to allow us to have the time and the opportunity to identify all the issues. You do want ministers to come here, but also you also will need ministers to interact with you on an ongoing basis on various issues that have been identified for implementation. This approach will ensure that we have a better understanding of the programs of various departments and of the issues that are confronting our rural communities, so that one department never tells you that, well, we don't deal with this or that, we only focus on our area, and this is where the joined-up government approach does help. One of the great strengths of the institution of traditional leadership is that it has endured over centuries. And some of you have even said that it is a permanent type of feature. And it has endured during times of plenty and times of peace. But it has also endured during times of great hardship and conflict. It has stood defiant in the face of colonial occupation and misrule in our country, and has resisted every effort to bend it to the will of the oppressor and the colonizer. Therefore, as we face the devastation that has been caused by COVID-19, and as we undertake the arduous journey to rebuild our country and to restore the livelihoods of our people that have been devastated, we can be certain that the institution of traditional leadership will be a firm and an unwavering ally in all that we have to do. This is an institution that has known far greater challenges and has ably led the people of our country to confront and overcome the challenges that it has had to face over time. And we don't need to go through the various key leading traditional leaders in a whole nation who stood up and fought against colonizers and oppressors and made sure that we emerge victorious. This debate has once again proven the value and the relevance of traditional leadership. And if people never really believed that traditional leadership is relevant, they need to listen to how you were debating economic issues today and how you have crafted plans like these and how you are looking forward in an aspirational way to develop the areas where you are. I want to urge traditional leaders to continue to be part of shaping the country and fighting for development, fighting inequality, ensuring that there is employment in our country, and making sure that our people do finally get the prosperous life that they need. We call on you to rise and play your part in building this country. And today you've demonstrated that this is the role that you are determined to build. Through the various structures that you're putting in place, but as architects of progress and as proud South Africans. Today, you've demonstrated that indeed you do want to be those architects. and not just social architects, but economic architects as well. And I thank you for the role that you have now carved out for yourself. And we will be there as government to walk this journey with you and to support you as you advance towards advancing and developing the lives of our people. I thank you.
Ngithokoze kakhulu kumongameli ngekulumo ehle kangaka nakada siphendula kuyikulumo phikiswano phakathi kwakhe namakhosi. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We are looking forward to the Lekgotla, to the two-day Lekgotla. I think the last president that had a Lekgotla with traditional leaders was I think, yeah, where all ministers were present was Honor His Excellency Thabo Mbeki. I think it was in 2008 that we had that Lekgotla where we had an engagement with the ministers, either than the Lekgotla that we had in 2017, but where we engaged with all ministers was in 2017 and we look, in 2008. So we look forward to that Lekgotla. It will go a long way. As traditional leaders say, we shall rise. I think that will help. So we'll rise together with government. Thank you, Bonda Visitor, for your presentations on the debate. Thank you, DM. We have a lot of work at hand that the President has given us. So as the institution, we are ready for the work that has been given to us. Let me thank the ministers that have joined us during this debate, those that have joined virtually, Bokhosi Mokoena and others, Princess Khabu. Thank you so much. Our partners that have also joined us virtually. Thank you, and thank you. And also our colleagues, chairpersons of provinces, thank you for the support that you've always been given to the House, and also for coming, our officials that are here. Thank you so much for the support that has been given. We have come to the end of our program. I will take this opportunity to invite you to lunch. I think it would be at the same venue that we had the last time. I think those that may not be aware will be ushered to that venue. Normally we have a photo shoot during the opening, but we don't have a photo shoot during the debate. So the President is also welcomed, if he has time, to lunch, to join us. If not, we still have an outstanding engagement with the President, so that, as Nkosulanga Mavuso was saying, that one needs to take the President through all these things that we are talking about, so that the President can see the vision of where we want to take the institution to. Thank you so much, President. Thank you so much, and we look forward to this strong partnership that we are about to enter. I will now adjourn this August House until we meet again. Thank you.
Good day all. There'll just be a quick sound check in the chamber, just testing purposes and visuals as well. As you can see, Ravi is standing in the top left corner of your screen.
Okay, Jason, sound check 1, 2, and 2.
Yes.
Sound check from the NCOP chamber, sound check 1, 2.
There we go, camera, thanks. Okay, I got you.
Okay, Jason, thanks.
Yes,
Okay,
I hear you.
bye.
Tumelo. Afternoon, colleagues.
Yes, Shells.
So, bro. Tumza.
Yeah, but-
Can you please, I don't, that picture, I'm to the seat of the chairperson there, and then the window. Are you able to close that curtain?
Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
this curtain.
let me just pull it. Yeah.
It's not giving a good reflection.